Welcome to Newshour. President Trump hosted a high-profile dinner last night with more than 24 top big tech bosses. Meta founder Mark Zuckerberg, Apple CEO Tim Cook, Microsoft founder and computing legend Bill Gates, OpenAI's Sam Altman, they all came together. Now, many of these C-suite superstars gave commitments to huge investment in the US, including Mr. Zuckerberg's promise to pour more than $600 billion into data centers over the next 3 years. Well, the presidential round robin came with the standard supportiveness, with the tech titans trying hard to praise President Trump without sailing too close to sycophancy. The event underscored a shift in Silicon Valley's relationship with Trump, once marked by clashes over regulation and content moderation, but now recalibrated since his 2024 election victory. Let's just take a look at some of the highlights.
I thought you'd say a few words, so we could take a couple of questions later, maybe. Mark, would you like to say a few words about the company?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's. Sorry, should I turn this on?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for hosting us. I mean, this is quite a group to get together, and I think all of the companies here are making huge investments in the country in order to build out data centers and infrastructure to power the next wave of innovation. So it's, we don't often get together as the CEOs of the different companies, but it's good to see everyone.
How much are you spending, would you say, over the next few years?
Oh, gosh. I think it's probably going to be something like, I don't know, at least $600 billion through 28 in the U.S. Yeah.
It's a lot.
No, it's significant.
That's a lot. Thank you, Mark. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Great to have you. Bill, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you for incredible leadership, including getting this group together.
Thank you, Bill. That was very nice.
Well, another statement made by the president at the event was in relation to how the UK is cracking down on what its citizens post online. Now, this has been a bone of contention between the Trump administration and the UK government for some time. Things came to a head, though, earlier this week with the arrest of the Irish comedy writer Graham Linehan. Well, Mr. Linehan, who has been a vocal critic of transgender activism in recent years, made headlines when he was arrested at London's Heathrow Airport on suspicion of inciting violence because of posts he had made about transgender issues on the X platform. His arrest has been seized upon by free speech activists who have condemned the move. Nigel Farage, leader of Britain's right-wing party Reform UK, he raised the arrest when he appeared before a US Congress committee on Wednesday. Mr. Linehan arrived at court just a few hours later wearing a supporter's sign saying there's no such thing as a transgender child. Well, now let's head to Washington and speak to our US correspondent, Ube Sharbanda. Ube, always good to see you. Let's look first at the dinner in the White House, a who's who of many of the planet's biggest tech bosses, all of them deferring to the president, most of them promising investment, some of them slightly overdoing the praise, perhaps. How has President Trump pulled this off, and what's in it for these tech CEOs?
Well, this meeting was important not just in terms of its symbolism, but in terms of the relationship between these leaders in artificial intelligence and in computing, and with the Trump administration, and most importantly, with the Trump administration's ability to oversee these tech titans, particularly when it comes to regulation. And that is the key here. This meeting was in the White House East Room. Officially, it was the White House Artificial Intelligence Education Task Force. That's what this meeting was billed. And for many of these tech titans, particularly Meta's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, and let's not forget that Google's, the head of Google and the co-founder Sundar Pichai and Sergey Brin were also there. Now, these companies had been facing significant pressure by the U.S. government, particularly the Department of Justice and the FTC, which oversees antitrust or fair, competitive market practices in the United States. And Google earlier in the week had essentially been spared the possibility of being broken up. Now, Google had been found to be in breach of monopolistic antitrust practices. This is the regulation in the U.S. federal government that ensures that no one company establishes illegal anti-competitive practices, which would essentially prevent any competition. And then that means that company would then be able to do whatever it wants and not offer consumers options. And so Google had been found to have been in breach of those federal regulations, essentially holding monopoly on internet search and not allowing fair competition by other tech companies. But it was spared the most severe penalty of being broken up as a company. That happened earlier in the week. And when that announcement was made, Google's shares skyrocketed, adding another $200+ billion in market share. And when President Trump in that dinner asked Sundar Pichai about that outcome, and Sundar Pichai laughed and said, well, we are relieved. And of course, Meta had faced similar scrutiny with the chairman of the FTC, with the Federal Trade, which oversees federal trade, had been very critical of big tech. So I think one of the main objectives here of these tech titans, industry leaders in artificial intelligence and in internet, was to get on the good side of the Trump administration. And how do you do that? You ensure billions of dollars of investments that would then help boost the American economy, that would then help the Trump administration realize the promises that the president made to American consumers, that he will significantly improve the American economy after a lackluster past four years under the previous administration. There was another quasi-humorous moment in that dinner when President Trump asked Mark Zuckerberg to speak to the press. The press was brought in briefly. Zuckerberg was sort of taken aback here, but what was also notable, the absence of one man, the former senior advisor to the president, of course, Elon Musk. His arch nemesis, Sam Altman, was right there, sitting right across from the president.
Ube, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you about this. Another tech titan who knows how to get on the right side of the president and the wrong side of the president is obviously Elon Musk. How are things right now between him and the president?
Now, Elon Musk released a statement saying that while he was invited, in order to be invited, he could not attend the White House task force dinner on AI. Now, let's not forget that Elon has also launched his own AI company, XAI, and Grok on X, his AI engine, which would be essentially in direct competition to his former friend, now nemesis, Sam Altman at OpenAI. But Elon Musk did send a representative at that dinner. Sam Altman had previously spent millions of dollars donating to President Trump's opponents, to Democrats. And then once President Trump won the election, Sam Altman and Zuckerberg, who had also previously donated significant amount of funds to the anti-Trump, political movement, then donated millions of dollars to the Trump inaugural fund. And they are making sure to send a message to the Trump administration that they are willing to play ball. Now, of course, with Elon Musk, who had been very close to the president at one point, had fell off. They're kind of coming back together. It seems the relationship is still chilly. Elon is no longer the head of Doge, doesn't have that direct access to the White House anymore. But nonetheless, his myriad companies, including SpaceX, have billions of dollars of contracts with the American government, and billions of dollars of potential contracts, including with the Department of Defense, are also at stake that Elon and his various companies are seeking with the president. Of course, there's Elon Elon Musk and Sam Altman are also in a fresh fight with one another, with one of Elon's former AI engineers, allegedly, according to a lawsuit being presented by Elon Musk. That engineer left X and then went over to Sam Altman's company, OpenAI, but had stolen, allegedly, a significant amount of code from Elon Musk's AI company. And now that is a fresh fight in the courts. So there isn't necessarily unity amongst all of these industry leaders in artificial intelligence, but it is a perhaps multi-trillion-dollar industry that would have significant impact on the American economy, and that's why they were there in the East Room of the White House.
Ube, from the battles between these tech titans to potentially the economic battles between the two biggest economies on the planet, how much of this bringing together of US CEOs is really about a combined effort to sort of join forces and really take on China?
Well, that is very significant because China, is also a major competitor when it comes to AI. We're talking about the battle between the United States and China on who can build the fastest, the most powerful AI infrastructure. What that would require to win that arms race, as it were, in AI, is you need industry. You need massive manufacturing centers, massive data centers that are required to power these AI engines and allow for research and development and new innovation. And that's why we heard Sam Altman, thank President Trump for his pro-industry stance that is allowing these AI companies to build these massive data centers all across the United States. Now, there are some complaints by many of the residents near these facilities, but another major issue when it comes to America's competition with China on AI is criticism from some in the Federal Trade Commission that tech companies like Apple, Tim Cook was there sitting next to the president as well, that Meta, that OpenAI had also previously been too close to China, and that there was concern that intellectual property of innovation in AI in the United States would then be either transferred illegally or stolen by the Chinese. And that is also a major concern by the Trump administration that they have made these tech companies very much aware of, and that the Federal Trade Commission is also putting significant pressure on these major tech companies, from Apple to Google to Meta and OpenAI to and even Elon, who has a significant amount of manufacturing centers in China, that, hey, you need to bring these capabilities and manufacturing centers at home here in the United States. Otherwise, you're going to face significant regulatory problems and major fines, and even potentially seeing your company being forcibly broken up. Remember, in American law, the federal government has the ability, if it deems a company establishing a monopoly, to forcibly break up that company into multiple other companies in order to protect consumers and to allow fair market competition. But yes, the competition between China and the United States on artificial intelligence was very much a concern and a topic at the heart of the White House discussions on AI with major industry leaders.
And something else that came up, Ube, was this story from the UK. This story of declining free speech. We've heard people talking about, how tragic and sad it is that the country that gave the world the Magna Carta, parliamentary democracy, seems to be struggling when it comes to online freedom of speech. It's gathered a lot of attention, this story, on both sides of the argument and on both sides of the Atlantic. How much of this do you think is genuine concern versus a sort of useful indicator to drive more support for conservative policies?
Well, the issue of censorship in the United Kingdom, and the most recent, the arrest of a comedian merely for statements that he made by British authorities, well, that came up in that White House meeting with the tech industry. In fact, Mark Zuckerberg was specifically asked about that issue by a reporter, President Trump laughs, saying essentially, well, Mark, now is your time to become, a politician. And Zuckerberg didn't really quite know how to answer, and he wasn't really prepared. But we've heard from senior Trump administration officials like Vice President J.D. Vance in that speech that he gave at the Munich Security Conference just a few months ago, criticizing European countries, including the European Union and other Western European countries, for censorship, for diverging from the values that they shared with the United States, and that why should the United States help protect the European continent if those values, including free speech, are being trampled upon by regulators, whether it's the European Union's Digital Services Act or in the United Kingdom, where we've seen multiple instances of British citizens facing arrest or major fines merely for something that they wrote or for something that they said. The big difference between the American judicial system and the system in the United Kingdom is that we have a constitution here in the United States, while in Great Britain, you have common law. So in the American Constitution, free speech is enshrined specifically in the Constitution. So it is viewed as a God-given right in the United States. Those levels of protection do not exist in UK law, or certainly in the European Union, and where Brussels has been attempting to put even more pressure on tech companies to censor individuals from being able to even express their opinions on any issue across a political spectrum on the internet. And so once you're unable to even broadcast your views, that essentially silences any competing political viewpoint. And that has been a major concern voiced by the Trump administration, is the slippery slope. If you arrest one person for expressing their views on the trans issue, well, then you are able to arrest any individual, whether on the right or on the left, for expressing their political views. And that is something that senior officials in the Trump White House, from J.D. Vance, even and other officials, have voiced serious concerns that Europe may be sliding down a very dark path in criminalizing not only speech, but perhaps even in an Orwellian fashion, any thought that does not comport with honestly an unclear standard, and that could bring Europe back to very anti-democratic dark days. And the United States is very concerned about that potential outcome.
Ube, always a pleasure to speak to you and hear your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from Washington. Well, from free speech then to US investment, President Trump's team has been busy figuring out how to harness the huge power of big tech as the battle for what we can say online heats up on both sides of the Atlantic. The president has found a way, for now at least, to keep the gatekeepers of public debate somewhat under control. Well, that is all for this edition of News Hour. From all of us here, thanks for being with us.